Hi, my name is Natasha Phoenix and I'm a sculptor who lives in East Lothian. I've been sculpting for about 8 years, doing pottery and sculpture for about that long. And I've been doing it professionally, selling it for the last 6 years. I originally attended a class at the Poldrate with a brilliant teacher called Gillian Taylor, and she was absolutely great at teaching, really helpful, showed me how to sort of build classical sculpture. And the result of that was that I made a sculpture of my daughters, who are identical twins, which is why it's of my daughters rather than one. I put pictures of that sculpture up on a very popular Facebook group that had about 17,000 members, and I got thousands of responses. The main comment was, you should take this up professionally, that you have a natural talent, and so I did. I've been making lots of small sculptures to keep the money coming in, and since lockdown I've actually been doing a lot more bigger figurative and portraiture sculptures. I love working with my hands. I love being a sculptor, but I do miss the children while I'm teaching. The type of sculpture I do is quite traditional. I build pieces and then hollow them out, or I build them so they don't need to be hollowed, which is a very old-fashioned way of making sculpture. I also do a lot of raku. Raku is a Japanese method of glazing and firing sculptural work or ceramics. You take a previously bisque-fired piece. So bisque-fired means that it's been in the kiln already once to harden up and vitrify the clay. So you take a piece that's been previously kiln-fired and you add a very specific type of glaze, with a low melting point. I make my own glazes using high alkaline frit and various oxides and cobalts. There's lots of recipes out there and lots of groups. So you glaze it, then you heat it up. I use a garden incinerator lined with ceramic fibre and a gas gun. I heat it up to, it's probably about 980, 1000 degrees, but I don't use a thermocouple. I do it by eye. So to me, I look for when the sculptures are all red hot and smooth and shiny, I know they're ready to come out. So I take them out using tongs when they're red hot. It is very dangerous. And I put them in a metal box with combustible material. So you could use anything. You can use leaves, seaweed, sawdust, anything, and it all gives you a different effect. And depending on how much oxygen you allow the piece to have, you get different colours and effects. I then take the hot piece out of the smoky box and put it in cold water. And if it doesn't explode, it comes out wonderful. Originally, this technique was for tea ceremonies. So they would make beautiful teapots and teacups. However, we know now that actually it's not really brilliant. It's not brilliant for using for food safe things. It's quite porous. So, and also the oxides can be quite dangerous. So I don't make food, sort of foodware and plates and things. It's mostly sculptural work. I've done lots of workshops in raku and I run them all the time, and people love it because you can come along, get a pre-made piece, so it's not been covered in a glaze, and then you choose how you glaze it, and then we put it in the fire, and we can't really predict fully how it's going to come out because a lot of it is down to chance. Raku actually translates as happy accident. And we, when we're doing the workshops, I make sure that they are fully accessible. For me, it's really important that everybody has access to the arts and skills and traditional skills. Not everyone's physically able to go up to a kiln, so we use the phone as a camera for them to be able to see their piece in the kiln. We always have a spare pair of hands to help people. Always make sure that they're wheelchair accessible. Hoping to do a workshop in Gifford in the bleach field that will be free for people who receive benefits, disability benefits or working tax credit. And hoping to do that if lockdown lets me. In the video that you're watching, you'll be able to see how I build the piece and really how I sort of fiddle around with it until I like it. I'm sure that more professional sculptors, they probably have a very set technique. I feel that I'm still learning, so I like to play around with the pieces until I find what that piece is to become. I have a vague idea at the beginning. The piece that I'm building there, I knew I wanted it to be a high, sort of very characterful, kind of arrogant looking woman. And I wanted her to be quite imposing. And also, I was quite clear about the shape that I wanted to create for the plinth. It's not on the plinth yet, but it will be soon. As for how I feel about using my hands to work, I find it gives me a sense of flow, which increases my sense of well-being. When you go in and out of that space, when you're not on lockdown and have children coming up to you constantly, as you'll see in the video, and my husband asking me things every few minutes, when I'm on my own, I'm able to go in and out of a sense of flow, and that's very meditative for me. Taking time to do something that you forget everything else around you is incredibly important for well-being. It's how your brain learns and expands, but it's also how your brain relaxes. So I get a lot out of doing this sculpture. If anyone was wanting to take up something like this, there are classes at the Pouldrate in Haddington, and I believe there's some really good classes in Dunbar and in North Berwick. I definitely recommend the Pouldrate for both pottery and sculpture, because I've had a really good positive experience there, and I've stayed in touch with the teachers and have been able to go back and get help, and they've donated lots of things for school fairs, and it's just a good community there. I think traditional skills in East Lothian are very well represented. We seem to have an affluent area where people have time to learn and keep these skills alive, because often they're not well-paid jobs, and it's a bit of a privilege to be able to do this. I certainly couldn't have retrained as a sculptor had I not been married to a man who was making a good wage, and so I very much appreciate the privilege that I have, but also I know that to keep traditional skills alive, people either have to do it on their own time or they have to have money or funding from elsewhere, and it would be great if after lockdown, if the funding continued well. I hope you get something out of watching this and listening to this, watching me fiddle around with the same piece of clay over and over. And I'm very happy. I do lessons and I do workshops. I'm very happy to do some teaching. And I would advise people, if you're wanting to start, just get yourself some clay and start. Watch YouTube videos. Send emails, go on groups. I've been working with a girl called Heather. She's from East Lothian, and during lockdown she took up pottery and she's absolutely amazing at it. And so I've been helping her glaze stuff, and she will go on to do traditional skills in the arts. So thank you for watching. I hope you like the piece. She's called Lilith, and have a lovely, lovely day.